Thank you. Thanks, Rishi. For those who don't know me, I'm in and around the education sector, and the reason why we've convened this first panel is to talk about, well, actually to unpack all of the slogans we hear all the time. So data-driven, data literate, AI-powered. Yeah, their slogans, our boards buy into them, they want us to drive certain things off the back of them, but what do they actually mean? So what we've got is a panel of the four of us from different sectors, different industries, and what we're going to do is unpack with you strategy, ethics, governance, and the messy business of actually making decisions to see where the real work happens. So I'd like each of the panel to introduce themselves and just give one line about what excites them about their role today. Tiffany.
So I'm Tiffany from Pandora Jewellery. I'm a global lead data engineer working in AI and innovation. What excites me about the world? Well, I think my favorite tennis player, Serena, won Wimbledon. Then, yeah.
Cool. I'm Marco. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Configur. After many years in industry, I've started up a startup 6 years ago. We work with CDO, CIOs, and business directors across 15 different sectors to help them deliver their data and AI strategies. So I'll be coming at it from a slightly different angle today and giving a slightly different perspective, I'm sure. But it'll be hopefully a really good chat. What was the question? What excites?
What excites you?
What, generally?
Generally,
okay. I'm on a panel. No, at the moment, chess. I've got obsessed with playing chess, so I'm a bit of a poker player, and now I'm really into my chess strategy. So
okay, we'll have a game on chess.
Sounds good. I'm not playing you. Sounds like you did already. I don't know why.
I thought chess was solved.
No.
Oh well. Oh, no go, isn't it? Sorry, Alex.
That's all right. I mean, we're off piste already. Who knows where this is going to go? I'm Alex Sidgreaves. I am the UK Chief Data Officer for Zurich Insurance. I think the question was what excites me about data.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
we both went gender. I blame Tiffany.
So weirdly, I think it's the people aspect. So I think right now people have never been more important. The technology bit actually for me is the easy bit. You can put the most shiny technology in that you like, but if you don't take the people on the journey, you're going to fail as an organisation. So for me, I think the people bit's the most exciting bit.
Cool, thank you. So the themes of this panel are turning data and strategic advantage, governance and standards, connecting data to business decisions, and ethics. And I'd like to start with ethics, because whenever we were gathering to prepare for this, we'd always start going into an ethics debate and have to go, no, stop, let's do this on the stage. So let's start with an easy one. What does ethics mean in your respective organisations?
Because I'm a lead AI developer, everything I do, it's about can my model actually go from POC to production. So ethics means it's hand in hand with my, it's like accountability. So when I design a model, I can easily put into POC, demo to all my stakeholders, get the attention. But the thing is, if we cannot pass the ethic review or checkpoint, that model cannot be used. So this is, yeah. I think recently we done model, it's about customer journey, segmentation, those kind of things to track our campaign performance, to optimize it. Then the model, as from the tech perspective, is brilliant, but some sensitive data we cannot be used. So from the ethic point of view, the metrics, it's trackable, but it's not useful. So those kind of things I really need to take serious consideration, because otherwise all my 6 months hard work just flow away.
Trackable but not useful rings bells for me.
Yeah, for me it's marrying up the explainable AI capabilities and being able to quantify, describe, understand what that's telling you in terms of normative values, and then your ethics policy should support that. So your ethics policy having normative standards that you can say this is what we think is acceptable is a key thing. And I think it goes bigger than that. I think as leaders in the space, we have to take, as you mentioned earlier, the staff on the journey with that, And I think there's an ethics side around how do you bring people on that journey? How do you train them up to be? There's a quote that's been circulated, and I still don't know who actually said it, but they said people won't lose their jobs because of AI, but people who can't adopt AI, it was, wasn't it? People who can't adopt AI will lose their jobs.
Microsoft used it.
Yeah, and I've seen it so many places. I couldn't actually pinpoint the source, but it's a very true fact, and I think we need to look at, and everybody focuses on these entry level jobs and entry level roles, but actually there's a demographic of people who aren't in senior positions aged between sort of 40, 55, and they're going to be the ones who struggle the most with it, and they've still got a lot of work to do. We're retiring later, so I think it's a combination of all of that for me.
Wow, that was a really...
Sorry.
You also nicked my favourite quote.
Oh, did I? Sorry.
So I think we started calling it ethics. I think in recent times we've kind of moved to calling it responsible AI rather than just ethics. So, I mean, it's the standard things you'd expect. It's trust, transparency and fairness, all of the things that your customer, your business would expect from you. But I think actually as an organisation, it starts to go further than that. I think it's about brand differentiator. I think if you can ensure to your customers that you are doing things ethically, that you are doing things responsibly, I think it's a real win in the age of AI, because as much as you have people that are so comfortable with this, you also have a lot of people that are so nervous of it, both in the organisation and outside. I think it comes down to, can we do things? Of course we can. Technology is amazing, but should we do things is the bigger question.
And just because we shouldn't, won't stop someone else. I mean,
which is where the grey area debate comes in, right? If my competitors are doing it, then I lose competitive advantage. So do I do it? But that's where you have to really understand what your organisational values are. And
it's also, they may be doing it, but does that mean I lose competitive advantage if my customers don't want it done? And I mean, I'm in the education space, and the quotation around you won't lose your job to AI, you'll lose your job to somebody using AI, in education gets followed up with, wouldn't you like to be that person because we can teach you? And there's been a bit of a quiet arms race to build courses that help business people like all of us and all of our colleagues understand what AI can do. And where those teams get challenged is when we're talking about AI, we're probably I'm going to argue we're probably the few groups of people who understand it's more than just ChatGPT. It's more than just large language models. We can talk about propensity models. We can talk about all sorts of different things. But the conversations I've been having, they're meaning large language models. Well, the business cases for large language models, the use cases are rather restrictive.
I don't know that I agree. I mean, I agree with you on your principal point. I think there are so many use cases for large language models. I think if I look at my business, it's full. I've got thousands, millions of documents running around. So the use cases, the efficiency, we are data rich and time poor. So LLMs give us just huge amounts of capacity and efficiency back into our business. But the wider point, I do agree.
Yeah, I think I was going to come more on your side of the fence, but I think it very much steeps in having the data grounding, and I think we speak to so many people and they say, oh, we've put Copilot in the business, we're doing fantastic, and it's like
they measured the adoption.
Yeah, I know, and you've skimmed the surface of actually what you can do with this, and then also it's done badly. We saw a customer who, before they started working with us, they put it in, and for some reason their governance wasn't right, because their data governance wasn't right. And that's what we're trying to say to people, your data governance underpins it. And it used to be just a compliance thing, a thing that you had to do to make sure that it was all ticking over. Now, because you're opening up access, you need to really double down on that and ensure it's in place. So somebody went on and said, what's the average salary of my team? And it gave them the answer. It's that kind of thing where you think, wow, okay, you really haven't thought through what access is being pulled into that, because that was needed for finance, but that's not needed for that team.
Yes.
And that's a very easy, simple example to think, well, how's that an oversight? But in the grand scheme, it can be, because there's so many moving parts.
Well, when we were throwing use case ideas around, I threw one in I wanted to tease our CISO, our Chief Information Security Officer, just to see how he'd react. We were in the process of architecting a new data lake, and so I said, why don't we ingest all emails into the lake? Think about that for a second. Why don't we ingest all emails into the lake, which already has a large language model on top of it? So that could mean you could type into the LLM, tell me what people think about me, tell me what people are saying about me, etc., etc., etc. So I left it like that. I think his words were, this is an incredibly stupid and dangerous idea, which is when I came back with the actual use case. It's already been implemented at the university, University College London, UCL. Only what they did was every email is given a rating 1 to 5 on its confidentiality. 1 is it's public information and you want to get it out there, like marketing material. 5 is top secret, like 5-year, 10-year, 25-year strategic plans. They would only ingest ratings 1 and 2, and the default was 3. In other words, an email had to be opted in order to ingest it in the lake. As a use case, I'm still not sure whether I think that's ethical or not.
I don't.
No,
It
I
depends
don't.
how sensitive people define the 1 to 5.
I think you've got that responsibility side.
Yes.
Comes onto that. You know, I'll send emails to certain people that I wouldn't want in a public domain because I'll say something direct, and we've all done it. We all do it. And if you're doing something that you think is confidential and then it's not becoming confidential, I don't think you can justify that.
Well, that's
for
the
a
use case
business.
around opt-in.
Yeah,
It's not
but you're still making it visible to be able to opt it in.
Yes.
And that's where, and then somebody is then having to screen that. So how do you then justify that? I personally don't think you can do it. That's my view.
Which starts to open up the conversation about ethics. Now, I'm going to pause here. Does anyone have any comments they want to make from the floor? If you do, just put your hand up. Go on.
Be interested to see what the panel thinks of certain companies who are pursuing policies of kind of like radical transparency. So I think GitHub is an example, perhaps where they make all meeting notes, they have to have an agenda, they have to be published around the whole business, etc. And I was thinking this recently, and you kind of touched upon it with the sort of confidentiality rating, but the meetings that are sort of public facing, where there is not confidential, obviously AI offers this opportunity to sort of provide certain, you know, it is now possible to kind of, it used to be like, you can't be in every room at once. Now you kind of can with the technology, but then how do you actually implement that in a way that is also still respective of confidentiality? And how can you, I suppose I'd be interested to see what you think of AI's potential for encouraging transparency whilst balancing that need for confidentiality as well.
Do you want to go, soon as
I mean, the first thing that comes into my head actually is Copilot kind of does that already, right? So if I'm invited to a meeting and I can't go, Copilot will give me a full transcript of what I've missed and what I've done. And actually one of the reasons that it took so long for us to get Copilot into our organisation more wider was I couldn't get it through my IGO. Because, and it was nothing to do with Copilot, but it's because our SharePoint practices were terrible. So
Sorry,
even
IGA?
though...
Your IGA?
IGO, Information Governance Officer. So the no police. So yeah, I mean, it took months because, and my argument kept being, but the problem isn't Copilot, the problem is SharePoint. And actually Microsoft luckily came out with some reporting that enabled us to help it. But it's kind of, a lot of that's already there. It's how you implement it. And I think, I don't know that, I think my answer is probably it's a use case by use case basis. I don't think I could have a blanket answer one way or the other.
Yeah, because I think the radical approach where it's publicly visible, I think it just stems productivity. I think you've got a situation where if I'm sat in a meeting, if you're meant to be in the meeting, quite happily, you know, you get the notes because you're meant to be in the meeting anyway. But if anybody can access that meeting, I'm choosing every word I say carefully.
Yeah.
Every single thing I talk about, I'm going to tamper down and say, oh, it's actually going okay. And in the background, I'm going, it's not. You know, what does it achieve? That's the thing. And I think that comes down to the use case conversation at the beginning. What's the benefit of it? If it's, I mean, I understand for government, if it's a public forum, if it's a situation like that, I completely get it. But I think if we're going to bring that into the businesses, you have to then, one, get everybody on board with the idea. And then two, you have to accept that your meetings are going to be having off-stem meetings, off-piece, where they go and say, oh, can I actually grab you by the coffee machine? And then you lose the traction and the visibility anyway. So Yeah.
It's a really different example, but we have, as I'm sure most of you do, you have a survey that goes out every year where you ask your employees how happy they are ultimately, right? Our survey is linked to our bonuses. So my view has always been on that. People aren't honest, right? Because they know, one, actually, if you get really poor results, there's more work to do.
Yeah.
And also, if you get pretty poor results, it's going to impact my bonus. Therefore, you're not going to get honesty. And I think that's what would come into the meetings.
Yeah.
We had, when I spent the first decade of my career in consultancy, primarily PwC, and that survey at PwC always contained the question, I am happy with my salary. Who here asked that question is happy with their salary? And regularly it come back, 74% are happy with the salary, and the consultants would go, no, that means 74% of my colleagues are idiots. So, Tiff.
We don't use GitHub, we use, like Copilot. But for us, I don't think we don't have, in my organization, we don't have this concern because you either in a meeting, you got the access, or you're not in the meeting, you have to request access, then we go GDPR, no, we go our governance team, they will review and decide you have the right to request that permission or not. And for all, external parties, they don't have any access to our meeting notes or recording. So I'm not really sure why GitHub does that, but if in
People are talking about it.
yeah.
I mean, we had an interesting discussion at the last university I worked at, which shall remain nameless in order that I can tell you this. We had a group of people who stood at their rights and insisted that they weren't recorded and that we turn off all transcriptions, and because they might say things that were against regulations or downright illegal. To which the conversation, how about you don't say something illegal? Do you know what the law is? Oh, but what if we don't know what the law is? Find out. It's the law. And actually ended up taking the line, if you're on a corporate system, you cannot insist on privacy. Which still, they're still having that debate because there are still people who say, but we need the freedom to discuss things that may be outside regulations. And actually the senior leadership are going, no, you can't. And it's, how do you know what the boundaries are unless you push them? Well, in the university sector, at the end of the day, you're dealing with a bunch of students who you can look out the window and see running around on campus. A very good reminder who your customers are because they're barging in front of you in the coffee queue, swines. But they're there. It means that when we're having all of the discussion about ethics, it's easy to get our customers' opinion because you go down to the coffee shop, grab 3 of them and go, right, tell me. So in a slightly more structured way, we do that. There's a student on every committee, on every significant committee. Which for me is touching on, whenever we were gathering together to prep for this, one of the things that came up was, and it's summarised in a line from a conference I was at last week, if we make our models explainable, that's enough. Think about that for a minute before I ask the panel's opinion. If we make our AI models, we, the data team, have done enough.
No, I don't think it's like the model I just mentioned. It's readable, explainable. I can give a very successful demo, but it just means you can explain how your model works, how you're going to use it, how the user is going to use it, how our customer going to interact. Then we can fit in the model to our campaign, optimize the investors' money. But because if you're using some sensitive data and going to cause some ethical issue, that means the model cannot be useful. So it's really, there are many, because different people have different opinion about the definition, like inclusive, those kind of things, the sensitive, how sensitive one individual can be. So for me and my team, we think a model we can explain it, we can basically explain every step of the way from POC to production. But if our stakeholders think that may affect our brand's reputation on the epic side, then yeah, we can't win. So I don't think readable, explainable equals ethical free.
I'll let you go first, Alex, because I keep speaking before you. So
It's all right. I sat on the end for a reason. It's the we bit, I think, having had the conversation slightly earlier. So I think if you take it as kind of read, then no, explainability is absolutely not enough for an organisation.
Yes.
You absolutely, as an organisation, need to ask the question, not just can we, but should we? 100%. Now, whether that's because your organisation's values are, we put the customer first, or whether it's because you don't want to end up on the front page of the newspaper because reputational damage is huge in these kinds of spaces, the we bit comes back to, is it the responsibility of the data office? Is it the responsibility of the organisation at large? And I think that probably depends on the culture of your organisation, how we do it. If a case is deemed, so everything has to be assessed. It's built into all of our processes, it's built into initiation, whether it's bought, built or adopted from an AI perspective. And if it is high risk, medium risk, or actually quite close to medium risk, it goes through an ethical screening. Now, that ethical screening is run by the data office and the responsible AI lead, but it is not the decision of the data office. We have the customer champions, we have data protection, and we have other people from around the business with an opinion, quite frankly. When we started to set this up, we literally went around the organisation and said, who's got an opinion, and bring it in. And from that, we will discuss it and we will come out with a recommendation. It's not a decision-making body, it's a recommendation. Ultimately, that decision then is on the head of the business area to decide if they take that forward.
yeah, I was going to say committee approach seems to be the best way to go about it. I think, though, there is more responsibility with the data teams than I think some of them want to accept. And I think that comes down to a few different angles. And one of them is, how long do you spend optimizing a model to remove all of the biases and ensure it's completely ethical before you get to the point where it becomes redundant because you spend so much time and money and cost, it outweighs actually the benefit. So I think that's where the data teams and the CDOs and everybody else need to really be the ones that drive that part of the discussion, because nobody else really knows in the business. And I think that's where the recommendation bar needs to be set and defined. And then, yeah, you can get everybody else's opinion. But I think that's one of the big things that I think is missing at the moment. And that's one of the key things that we see quite a lot that isn't happening.
You have to understand what your line is before you start having these conversations.
Or at least I've found you need to understand at least roughly where it is.
Yeah, I mean, you have a framework, right? You go through that, it gives you the guidance, but yeah.
Certainly in higher education, because you can round up the academics and the students, you have this opportunity of going, right, let's talk you through it. What do you think? And what's interesting to me is you get a range of opinions, and it tends to be your computing academics and students. They're prepared to sign off on damn near everything because they want to get under the hood and see how it works. They're acting like a mechanic with a race car. At the other end of the spectrum, and it varies from model who it is. Sometimes it's the art students, sometimes it's the business, sometimes it's the law students and academics who are going, no, actually, no, we're not comfortable with that.
The lawyers are very rarely comfortable with much.
Funny enough, they was reasonably comfortable with a chatbot study buddy.
Okay.
Because one of the universities was working with AWS, and so if you think about a chatbot study buddy, you train your large language model to include the curriculum and the course materials and typical errors, because anyone who's familiar with teaching, when you learn how to teach a course, you learn what the typical student errors are and how to correct them. Train an LLM on those, and then it can act as a study buddy to you. So you say, I'm confident about this, I'm unconfident about this, give me some help, and it will work through options with you. We trained it on 2 courses. One was computing, because they were basically biting our hand off, and the other was law. The reason why law is it's a reasonably well-defined, there is such a thing as a yes and no in law, but it's incredibly wordy. So it's a good one for an LLM. Now, that project is still ongoing, so I can't report on its success, but it's proving interesting and engaging the students in how comfortable they are engaging with an LLM in that way.
I think as well, the bit that's interesting is that gut reaction versus when you've had the discussion. So if I think about something that we brought, claims brought. So obviously for an insurance organisation, fraud is a massive piece. It always has been, it always will be. And there was a new piece of technology that actually has been in use by the military for a very long time. And it uses your voice to decide if you're lying or not. Now, everybody's initial reaction was, we're not touching that with a barge pole. There is absolutely no way. And we've looked at technology like this in the past, and that's absolutely been the answer. But what was different about this technology was it looked at, so rather than putting you against the baseline that the tool had, it put you against yourself.
Yeah.
Which is a massive difference from an ethical standpoint. There's not the bias there of if you don't have a certain dialect, if you don't sound the same, if you're not male, female, or whatever in between. You are asked a set of baseline questions and then you are measured against yourself. So actually, we did let it go through. It went through to pilot and that has actually been really successful. But it's that gut reaction. But then when you really get under the skin of it, I think you can come out with a very different answer.
I think I know the professor who worked on that, because University of East London lost it to the University of West London. And it's that whole concept in AI research of what are you comparing against. That tends to unpack a lot, as you're saying, that tends to unpack a lot of this. Does anyone else have any comments from the floor?
There's a really good example I like to use. So, and this is all about whether it comes down to the gut feel, which is a good one. So there's a tool called Replica. Don't know if you come across it. So it emulates like human emotion. And in China, it's got over 32 million users. And they've got a massive isolation, loneliness problem, and people are going on and they're talking to it. And over 50% of people have said, I love you, to that chatbot at some point or other. So when you break that down, there's two reactions. And the first one normally is, oh, that's very strange. And I was talking to somebody that is so against AI, you wouldn't believe it. He's a really good entrepreneur, sells shoes, loads of shoes. And he was just like, that is horrendous. He said, this is what I was worried about with AI, this kind of nonsense. But my counter to him and to everyone else in this room is, well, if they're getting what they need from it, why is it ethically wrong that they fall in love with a chatbot? Does it really matter?
If someone's getting a high from drugs, is that ethically wrong?
Well, yes, because they're illegal. But falling in love with a chatbot isn't. Not yet, anyway. I mean, maybe give it a few years. Give it a few years, and I'm sure it will be. But
I think that's
but it's not yet. But it is. It is a. There's no law that governs it.
Yeah.
Whereas different with drugs, there is a law, but there's no law that governs it. So if they get an outcome, and that outcome is positive for them as a human, and again, it comes back to that human side. We're making them feel more human, more loved. Does it matter?
My brother-in-law runs marathons, and when he's had to bench himself because of injury, he's had to fight depression because of how he gets from running the marathons. Is that ethical? Discuss. And it's substitute marathon running for whiskey. Is that ethical? Discuss. Both are legal. And I think that's where that comes in. We're touching onto a topic that essentially says, what do we as a society think about the use of this thing?
Yeah.
And we could substitute anything in here, because if we start to substitute in religion, where it has the same effect, would split the room, I'm sure. So it's, I mean, feel free to comment, put your hand up and let me know what you think.
Because I think the reality is we're all focused on hopefully all focusing on the high impact, low risk opportunities at the moment.
Yes.
We're embedding stuff in, so that's where we're all focusing. But that's going to run out. All that nice stuff is going to run out.
Yes.
And we're going to say, and then we're going to be challenged with, what next? And I think that's when we go, well, who is in charge of that?
And it's interesting. So if I think about more recently, the hype of agentic AI, right? I mean, you can't go anywhere without the conversation about agentic AI. My board are very excited about agentic AI. Microsoft came in to talk to them and said, well, in 12 to 18 months, the entire organisation is going to be agentic. You're just going to need a few people to run around at the top. And they looked at me and went, I think we're behind. I went, we're fine.
Yeah.
Don't worry. But in having the conversations, they're excited about the concept of agentic, but from an educational standpoint, I don't think they understand the difference between agentic and agent.
No, they don't.
Right? They really don't, because we've got agents, we've got scaled agents, they're great, they work well, there's lots more scope in doing that. If I really turn around to them and say, okay, so if we go truly agentic, you're going to have autonomous digital workers running around your organisation making decisions that do not have, you know, this thing you love, this human in the loop that you're really comfortable with, it's not going to be there anymore. I'm not saying we won't have human oversight, but you're not going to have a human in every loop. They're going to be off over there learning, doing their thing. I think they'd absolutely panic.
Yeah. Nobody's ready for that.
So the question is, when you're writing an AI or data strategy, how many years out do you plan for? And to underpin that is when you look at all the areas we've been going through, value, risk, governance, and all of those different areas, each one of those has its own different timescale. And I'm trying to work out when you're writing these strategies, how long do you kind of plan out for with this unstable market or disruptive market?
My personal advice is no more than a year at this point in time. Is moving so rapidly. You can have an overarching strategy for 3 years, 5 years of all the things you want to achieve, but in terms of how you're achieving them, if you go more than a year, by the time that year's up, you're going to already be looking at the new technology that's available. Yeah. I mean, you have to look at the way it's like a swarm is how I describe it at the moment. The movement of the big they're trying to monopolise ultimately, and you know we have to bed down and decide what actually is viable, what's useful. If you speak to some boards and CEOs and different things, they'll tell you, oh, we're going to be vibe coding in the next 3 months, and we're just going to be automated. I'm going to be able to do that on my desk, and I'm just like, you're not. You know, it's such bad code. It's so bloated even at the moment. The security risk is so high. But they've heard vibe coding on a podcast somewhere, and that's now their strategy, that they're going to get rid of their whole development team of like 5,000 people. And you say, well, no, like do for the first year, just look at agents, maybe models. Then the next step is look at agentic, but I don't think we're really going to actually be able to theoretically implement that. And then you can look at vibe code, maybe in 2-3 years when it's actually a viable option. I mean, it's great as an assisted code. Everyone's doing that, that's great. But pure vibe coding? No, things like that.
When you're thinking about how you implement, how far ahead are you looking?
It's a very good question because I'm just reflecting my past few years in Pandora. So it really depends how mature your data team and also your the entire ecosystem. So for Pandora, if you just look for an individual use case, okay, 6 months, 3 months, we did it. But if you look the entire organization picture, actually took us 3 years to get into where we are. Now we are leading the industry, the luxury retail industry. We are very established. But the journey was so rough and bumpy because at the beginning we had to migrate all the systems, the platform together. So migration took us like 18 months, almost 2 years. Then 18 to 20 months, I don't remember the exact number. So after the data all in big place, because we are using Azure ecosystem, we use Databricks, ADF, signups, all those things. Once the pipeline is ready, that data clean, structured, and also we had another thing is how we are going to, we got infrastructure, but what about the product lines? What do we use data contract? Do we use mesh or data mesh? Also, so many different ways to do things. By the end, what works really good for us is we use different data like product lines. We take data product as product. So that means we have maybe 200 different data engineers, data scientists, machine learning engineers. We split into different product lines. We can still under the same AI data engine in the engineering umbrella, but they are working for different product lines, have different PMs. From there, different team, product team, they will have different stakeholders. Some team for marketing, finance, merchandise, supply chain, etc. So that's sorted. Then we start to, because now we got the data, it's settled, it's clean, it's timely, real time, you can do everything. Now we start to take the use case. Then for here, it may be more relevant is how long you're going to plan from planning to implementation. It depends. For finance department, it's easy, maybe all the use case within a week, 2 weeks done, because the metrics are static. But if we are working for marketing, that's where our money from, the Because it's all our campaign is running, like we're feeding the data to Google Ads, TikTok, all those paid media. It's real time. That means we use Kafka, we use all the big data engineering tools. The implementation and specific metrics we're tracking, it's really sensitive. So those projects can run like more than a year. Yeah.
So I'd probably split it, or we do split it. So my strategic cycle is 3 years, which is kind of fairly standard, right? And for a lot of your kind of foundational data stuff, that works. What we tend to do is the overall strategy, as should be, is always linked to business strategy. So what areas of the business trying to grow, what areas of the business are maintain, and therefore what are you looking to do in that? And then it's principles based, so it's much more kind of not vague, but high level of this is where we're trying to get to. But then what we have underneath are roadmaps, and those roadmaps are living documents. So, you know, we can respond, we can change. If you look at my AI strategy last year, it was very much looking about in what instances do we build, buy and adopt, right? That was probably a large focus, because we wanted to make sure that we were getting the best from the engineers that we'd got, that we were, you know, we're a large group, so that we were getting the best from other countries, and that we weren't looking to build everything, because actually some people can do it better, quicker and cheaper. These days, it's how do I implement an agentic framework? How do I put in monitoring that's going to sit around the framework? Which partner do we work with to get that in place as a group? So I think that stuff is just going to constantly change, and I think it's really okay to have living documents that move, because the world does move. So as long as you've got that almost strategic principle that you're trying to aim to, that you can always go back to and say, is that taking me closer or further away from where I'm trying to get to? The actual how stuff doesn't necessarily need to sit in the official strategic document.
That's certainly what I've done in the past, and it's crude to say it, but essentially my strategies have been, here's a list of priority use cases, and here's the order in which we're going to tick them off, and here's how we're going to do it. And that's a living document, because a new technology can arrive tomorrow that makes the one that's 2/3 of the way down the list really straightforward. And so it's having a constant debate with the business, as in, what's the value of this use case, which they own? What's the cost of the use case, which I own? Prioritise accordingly. Yes, there's a conversation about making sure you've got infrastructure in place, which is the 3-year cycle, that long-term work. But then that agile fleet of foot, agile in both capital and small a, and being fleet of foot and responsive, that's kind of... Actually, most of the teams I've worked with, they want to be that, so it's enabling that.
What we are doing, we are using data contract.
Yeah.
That means we have data owner, we go business owner. They have to look after the documentation on Confluence, keep updating them. It's like a live document. So
I've got one word to sum up how everyone's AI strategy works at the moment, and we send it quite regularly to each other internally. And if you're a Friends fan, you'll remember them trying to get the big sofa up the stairs. Pivot. So we send that GIF on a regular, because it is something that you have to be able to pivot and be agile and adaptive.
Just quickly, because we're out of time.
Yeah.
So
that was one with, from an AI literacy perspective, before I little party, but from an AI literacy perspective, back to the strategy, how do you find, because AI, of course, is generally a new topic. What's the main priority that you've done in terms of AI literacy uplift across your organizations? And because it's not going to be one specific, like a CDO team only trying to get up on it, it's the entire organization. How have you been able to manage that? Because one of the challenges we see, I would love to understand how you're addressing it.
I think the real key is it's not one size fits all. Like with any kind of training, and I am clearly not the person most of in education on the panel, but it's about working out what your personas are and what you need to do with them. So the training that we would do with our internal data science or our data team is going to be completely different to what we've done. Things like prompt engineering training, we've taken people through responsible AI training. We have something called the Data Science Partnership Programme, which is actually for people who want to be a bit more in depth. It's a 6-week programme where at the end of it, they can go back into their business and really understand what use cases to look for. So I think it's a lot of the training is there to help people understand, there to remove fear, it's there to help adoption. even things like hackathons, even things like, demystification sessions. It's a big bag of stuff, and you try lots of things and you work out what works for your organisation. But I think the key as well is that bottom up, top down piece. You need the senior leaders in your organisation to be out there and talking about this and talking about the importance of it, as well as doing all the bottom up stuff. So I think it's just so many different things, and you kind of throw it at a wall and see what works.
Yeah. I think there's been so much shadow use of AI so far, because we haven't rolled it out as quickly as we should do. People are very aware of what it's capable of, and then we're sending them on training to learn how to do prompts, which they've been doing for 2 years. And I think that
you clearly work in a very different organisation.
It varies, honestly. But we work with construction clients, sports clubs, government, and you'd be surprised, especially the younger generation. They're doing their meal plans, they're doing everything.
Yeah.
They've been doing it for a long time. And I think one of the things that we've learned and we help with is the key thing is get that message out from the top as to what the use of AI is going to be in the organisation. And it's something that gets skirted around because nobody wants to address it really, because there's obviously this whole thing of will people lose jobs. If you can get that message out and say, this is what we're planning on doing with AI, it's going to change, but this is the plan, they feel more comfortable, because there's just a fear. So when they're going on the training, they're still sat there thinking, well, yeah, this is great, but I can see this is going to replace my job. That's what they're thinking.
And
that's what
I
needs to
think
address.
I was talking about this yesterday with some people, and I think one of the really important things is that actually we haven't done a good enough job at Zurich, and then certainly another number of other organisations, and partly because we don't know the answer, but of presenting what the future will look like. We're quite good at saying, AI is to augment the human, it's not to replace the human, and then we come along with all these tools and they look at it and go, well, that's my job. And we talk about, the future, we're going to upskill, we're going to do it, but we haven't painted the picture of what the future's going to look like so that they can buy into it and go, yeah, I believe you, you're not coming after my job, and actually I can see where I'm going to fit. And I think the reason we haven't is because we don't yet know quite what that future looks like. But
I think transparency on that's great though.
Yes. Yeah. Very good. Before I finish up.
Yeah, I think for us, I like seeing top down, bottom up. In Pandora, this works really well because I don't know somehow who convinced our CEO, CTO, they are all on the same boat. AI, it's a clear message. We are using AI, we are having AI, we're trying to implement all those things. So with us, we have, because Pandora is a Danish culture-driven company, it's really open-minded, it's very flat hierarchy. We have monthly town hall, quarterly town hall. Quarterly town hall is almost like a TV show, live TV show. You will, all the C-suite, they will be there, send the message out. So it's quite reassuring, we know what we are doing. I don't think, and they will help you whatever you need to achieve that.
I mean, I did encounter a slight issue in that our CFO went, I'm more than happy to sign off an organisation-wide spend on Copilot if you can give me a 5-year business case. I'm sorry, you want me to give you the 5-year payoff for a technology that's barely a year old. Anyone got a crystal ball? But actually, we have an advantage in the education sector in that we've got researchers. So actually, a lot of the conversation wasn't data teams talking to professional services, it was academics talking to academics. So the dean of the School of Computing would stand up and go, look at all of this whizzy stuff my guys have done. All the other deans get competitive and go, right, guys, I want to work out how we're using that because I'm not letting the computer scientists beat us to the punch. From my point of view, that's wonderful. Because all of a sudden I've got people at my doorstep going, I want this, I want this, I want this. Right, business case to the CFO, please, and I'll give you whatever you want.
yeah, FOMO is real. FOMO is absolutely real. I think the other one thing I'd say, and you triggered me on it, is one of the things we've had massive success with, you talked about the youngsters just get this stuff and it's native to them. Reverse mentoring. We've paired up our youngsters with our with our senior leaders to show them how to use this stuff, and that's been really successful.
The kid with the videotape, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Stage. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.